Hi, I'm Jack Canfield, and welcome back to another segment of Talking About Success. My next guest is Myra Salzer. She's known as the inheritor's advocate. She's the founder of the Wealth Conservancy, and she became an early adopter of fee-only financial planning. And she's penned 4 books on topics ranging from inheritance and the effect it has on an individual's self-worth to establishing a near-perfect family office. So lots of stuff around money. Very good stuff. Having a family office, having children that are going to inherit some money. I'm really glad we're going to be talking about this. And through her client relationships and her workshops and her books, Myra helps heirs integrate with their wealth to harness their potential and realize their greatest life ambitions, which we all want for ourselves and for our children. So I'm glad to welcome you to my show.
Well, thank you, Jack.
Okay. We're just going to have a conversation. And because you asked, I'm going to let you start it.
Well, I know that typically you ask the interviewee the questions, and I really want to ask you if you, after spending time with me the last couple days, have shifted at all your understanding of the challenges of inheriting wealth, and if that may have made a difference in how you might be leaving your own assets to your children and stepchildren.
Well, I do know a little bit about that because I've had some friends who inherited wealth, and I know that there's some real issues around, feeling embarrassed by the wealth. I know there's issues around wanting to steward it well and not knowing necessarily how. I know there's issues around people being afraid that people are only going to like them for their money. I think I mentioned to you before we came on camera that I was a friend of Larry Rockefeller's, and he always wanted me to introduce him as Larry, not Larry Rockefeller, because he didn't want people putting him on that financial pedestal, if you will, or abusing the relationship because of that. But I would say that I wasn't aware it was such an intense problem. Maybe in some of the depth of the emotion around it, I probably feel a little more aware of it. And because I have wealth myself, and I know that I don't want to put my children in a bad place, I don't want to disempower them. And I've seen 2 of my older children got money from a trust fund from my first wife, and I watched how it basically ruined them for a couple of years, because one of my sons was in art school, and all of a sudden he's getting like $3,000 a month, which is not a lot of money. But he's in art school as a student. Right. If I got $3,000 a month when I was a freshman in college, I had to work and do all that stuff to make them. He started to go, well, why am I working so hard? Why do I need art school? And so it really affected him in a I think a disempowering way. So I'm just a little more aware of it in talking with you. I hadn't thought about it for a long time.
Mm-hmm. And now that you have thought about it, can you relate it all to your own personal experience of having a liquidity event in your life and being in a completely different position, not only financially, but in terms of your own business? I mean, if you sell your own business, it's going from having this purpose that you are, building and growing to having liquidity, and now what? And
well, I've had 2 experiences with that. The first one was when Chicken Soup for the Soul took off. All of a sudden, I went from making like $140,000 a year, and 2 years later, I made $6 million. And I have my own issues of like, God, what do I do with this? Maybe a little guilt in the sense of there's all these other people that don't have as much. How much do I put into philanthropy? How much do I steward for my own self? What do I spend? Before, I would have to decide, do I really need that sweater? Now it's like, well, I could buy it in all 5 colors. Why not? And it still took me, I'm going to say 2 to 3 years before I felt like I stepped into my new identity with that money and having it and feeling good about it, comfortable with it, and knowing how I wanted to work with it. And I remember not too long ago, someone, and it was still little trickles of that because I grew up in a very poor family. My father made $8,000 a year. It's 8 with 3 zeros. We lived in West Virginia. And I I went out to dinner with my co-author, Mark Victor Hansen, and it was his birthday, and a good friend of mine, Alex Mendoza, was there. And we're going to order wine. And he says, well, which wine do you want to order? I said, well, I was picking one that was about the $40 range. And he said, I would have taken you for a $100 bottle, old guy. And I went, God, it just seems like such a waste of money to spend that much money on a bottle of wine. But I ordered one that night, and I have to say it was a little better. And I don't always order $100 bottles of wine, but I've chipped in on a $1,000 bottle of wine with 4 people. So I had to move out of my economic comfort zone. And also, when I sold my company, the Chicken Soup for the Soul franchise, which we owned, which I sold and brought in tens of millions of dollars, I literally said, okay, we're going to give $100,000 to charity. We sat down and figured out which ones. I wrote a check for $100,000. And I think 2 weeks after that, I was still reeling from the experience that I'd written a check that big. I remember writing a check to the IRS for $1 million. That was a weird experience. So all those things, they definitely change you. They definitely change your perspective on life, yourself, your world, your self-worth. You question it, you wonder about it. Eventually, you get comfortable with it. At least I did. But
Yeah.
I think we talked about sudden wealth, whether it's the lottery, selling a company, or Silicon Valley, you do a startup and all of a sudden Google buys it for $100 million. It totally shifts the game.
Yeah. Did it shift your relationships with family members or friends?
A little bit. One of my kids is very, very, I don't know what you call him, frugal, ethical. Dad, I need this for $8.11. Give him the $8. Give him a $20 bill. I get the change back, including the pennies. My other kid, Dad, I need $10. I give him a $20. I'll never see the other 10 ever, So one of them goes, like, bonanza, I'm a rich kid, and the other one goes, I don't want to take advantage of it. I've lent him money to buy his house. He's been paying me back regularly every month. He's actually paying me back in advance, wants to be done with it. I would say some of my friends and relatives went, oh, he's got money. I've got a problem. I should ask him. And I know I'm never going to get it back. So is it a loan? Is it a gift? I mean, it does bring up issues like that, no question.
And have you ever loaned money that you were sorry you did afterwards?
When I first came into a lot of wealth, I loaned a lot of money. I don't think I saw any of it back ever. And what happened is, I stopped loaning money, by the way, as a result of that. People would go, well, I'd say, you loan me this money, or I loaned you this money and you haven't paid me back. Well, other people loan me money and you have a lot more than they do. They need it more than you do. So you're kind of like lower on the list. And in their mind, they didn't really feel like they really needed to pay it back because they didn't think I really needed it. So I got to a place where I stopped loaning money.
And I notice with my clients that when they first get money, and there's the expectation is they're supposed to be really happy and all their problems are supposed to be solved. And what is incongruous is that they have to go through a mourning process. And that mourning process is mourning the loss of their life that they knew up to that point. And if they don't go through that mourning process and integrate with their wealth, they won't make wise decisions over that, over their wealth. And I just wondered, have you noticed, or did you notice, that you had that same kind of, oh, my life is never going to be the same, and you needed to take the time to mourn that loss before?
I think because I earned it and I intended to want to earn large amounts of money, that was an intention of mine. It wasn't the only thing that was driving me at all.
Sure.
I was driving to make a difference. But it definitely impacted me in the way we talked about. But I don't think I mourned the old life. I think, up until very recently, I still thought, what if I lose all this? Then I literally wake up from dreams where I'm on a street, living like with pushing a garbage, what do you call it, shopping cart.
Right.
And, but I'm really clear now that's never going to happen for a couple of reasons. One, I have a fair amount of wealth, and even if the whole country went bankrupt, I've protected myself in a lot of ways. And I also know I could recreate it. I used to run workshops, and you had to be a millionaire to be in it. And it was I did a few of them, but the inherited wealthy versus I made it wealthy. there was a difference in the energetic. One was just stronger, more confident than the other, and I think the others were less sure. So for me, I don't think I mourned anything. I think I sometimes felt guilty about it for a while because I didn't quite know how to justify having all that money. But as I learned how to steward it better and created my own, let's call them bar graphs of how much was for me, my kids, for the community, for the future, for philanthropy, for taxes, I reached a number that I feel comfortable with, and I still live my life pretty much from that place.
And as a result of knowing me now, what are you going to do or not do with your own children and grandchild?
Well, I would say before I even met you, but reinforced by knowing you, I literally just changed my estate plan. I found out one of my kids told somebody that he was just waiting for dad to die.
Oh no!
And that was okay in a sense, like not hoping I would, but kind of waiting. Like I don't really have to go out there and work hard, because dad's eventually going to die and he'll leave me a lot of money because he has a lot. And when I heard that, I realized that's not a good place for him to be living his life from. So I sat down with him and the mother of my grandson, and I said, I just want to tell you, we've changed the estate plan. I'm going to leave a little bit just so you don't feel like I hated you. I'm going to leave enough for Ozzy's education and the medical emergencies, and that's it.
So that's your grandson.
That's my grandson. And I told my other two children that, and a little shock at first. But I think they both now have stepped up, and it's really empowered them to start taking more responsibility, which I wasn't even aware they weren't doing. It was very interesting. And I said to them, I'm going to leave you this amount of money. And one of my sons said, well, could you give it to me now? Because I would like to start this business. Well, I don't want to wait 10 years or 50 years or whatever. And I said, fair enough. But realize if I give it to you now, there's nothing then. And he said, fine, I'm good with that. So he bought he took this old warehouse and divided it into condos. It's very basic. And he put a music studio in there. He's got a recording company.
Good for him.
He's doing really well.
Yay.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You've integrated well.
Thank you. I get the good seal of approval.
You have my blessing.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
If there's anything I'd like to leave you with, it's that if you are not an inheritor but know an inheritor, or more than one, you're apt to have some judgments about that person. And usually those judgments aren't very positive. They might be that you assume they're lazy, or they're spoiled, or they're undeserving. And I'd like you to examine your own judgments. And if you're an inheritor, you might have judgments about yourself as being unworthy, or that it's not fair that you got this when so many didn't, and you were given a real responsibility and you received it for a reason, and it's because somebody wanted you to have that. And I'd love to see you own it proudly and responsibly, and have it serve you and the planet. And so that's my message. And again, I'm Myra Salzer. I have the Wealth Conservancy. I have the privilege of working with several colleagues, and we're all about serving people who have large inheritances.
And my website is?
And my website is thewealthconservancy.com.
Very good. Well, that's the first interview I've ever done where I was the interviewee instead of the interviewer.
And you did very well.
Thank you very much. I passed the test. I love it.
Yay.
Right. Thank you.
Thank
I hope
you.
this has been helpful for all you guys. I know it was for me. Made me think a little deeper about some of these issues. And I look forward to seeing you on the next edition of Talking About Success. Until then, have a great, wealthy, abundant, joyful, and meaningful life. See you soon.
Thank you.